Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome in, friends, to Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. It is Monday, April 28th, 2020 here in the city of Chicago, and we have a lot to get to today. But before we get to the show notes, let's take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow me all over social media. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media, and the show is on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. You can become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have a bunch of fun tiers that you could join, along with getting our interviews ad-free and before anybody else on patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities. We have swag, friends. Get your holiday season shopping done early at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And to see what we're up to all across the Mercado Airwaves network, follow the network on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves.
You see the Bears taking over with Nick Foles at the helm, but Trubisky looked uncomfortable sitting in the pocket.
Foles on third down to the end zone. It is Graham again. Same spot as back in the second quarter. His second touchdown today.
Clock up, making sure it's a two-score game.
2nd and 6. Catch is made by Robinson, and he breaks free. Allen Robinson takes it all the way for a Bears touchdown.
The practice squad player. Let's see how that looks.
3rd down and 8 with the Bears already in field goal range. The pass is caught in the end zone for a touchdown by Anthony Miller. The Chicago Bears take the lead with 1:53 seconds remaining.
Play split safety, two safeties over the top. Don't let anything go over the top of you.
2nd down and 4. As Ryan fires, intended for Ridley, and is intercepted. Picked off by Tashawn Gibson.
And with that, the Chicago Bears moved to 3-0, beating the Atlanta Falcons 30-26. Atlanta going to 0-3. Another devastating loss for Atlanta. Chicago, another comeback win. It's part of it because of them, part of it because of the other team. But really what it comes down to is the story of the season happened in the third game, in the third quarter of the 2020 season. Nick Foles replaced Mitch Trubisky as quarterback, and now the conversation has begun. What is next? So many things to talk about this game, but we need to talk about the storyline, like what it is about the quarterback. And everybody knows that how I felt about the Mahomes-Watson debacle. And it's one thing to miss on a draft pick. It's another thing to not do your job, not do the due diligence to make sure you overturn every single rock. And they didn't do that in the process. But then we can move beyond that. He's played bad the last 3 years. Seems like a good dude. Mitch seems like a really good dude, but has played bad the last 3 years. Seems like he never picked up the offense. And we saw it yesterday that as soon as Nagy had a quarterback he trusted, he let the playbook open. And the Bears were able to come back when they were down 10-26 to win that game. Now, in all of this, was I surprised? Yeah, a little bit. When you're 2-0, and even though you're playing really bad and you've played bad throughout those two games that you won, you still have a little leeway. But at the end of it, I always thought Matt Nagy was never going to ride or die with Mitch Trubisky this year. I always thought he was on a quick hook. And in other regimes, maybe in other years, Nagy would have given him a little bit longer. But I don't think he was going to be able to afford it, and especially in that game where you needed that win. Say what you will about the true contendership that is this Bears team. In the NFL, you can't take any win for granted. And they needed to win that game. You need to take these W's when they're given to you, like Atlanta is willing to do it. To almost every team in the NFL, especially, you know? So, Mitch is taken out of the game. Nick Foles has this comeback, has this crazy play with Allen Robinson. And, you know, we all have to admit, you know, I'm not one of these guys that blames the officials. The officials were totally off in this game. The Bears got hosed a bunch of different times. But you can't go back, can you? This is the real testament to this move. Matt Nagy made this move knowing full well that he can't go backwards. How are you going to go to week 4 against Indianapolis and say Mitch Trubisky is our starting quarterback? When Jimmy Graham looked like he was 5 years younger, when Allen Robinson is getting touchdown passes, when Anthony Miller is doing diving catches if he just hold on to the ball, but is having diving catches in the end zone. Mind you, it's a beat-up Falcons secondary. It's a bad Falcons team. Amazing Quinn still has a head coaching job over there. But that is a high-powered offense. Didn't have Julio, granted. Akeem Hicks looked good. That defense, again, giving points up, but you can only do so much, and they will keep you in games, and that's what happened in this scenario. But when I say you can't go backwards, I don't mean Mitch is done for the season. Don't get it twisted. Nick Foles is not this Iron Man. Nobody is really in the NFL. But in today's day and age, especially in this type of season, you might see number 10 back out there on the field. It's more than likely that will happen. The real interesting thing behind closed doors that I want to know, how did Nick Foles not win this job during the offseason, during training camp? Was it simply because they weren't on the field? Was it Matt Nagy, or was it Ryan Pace? And here's the thing, Ryan Pace will always be judged off of this pick. And it's not Trubisky's fault. He didn't choose to go second overall. He didn't choose to have an organization give up the entire ranch to get him. But it is Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace's fault. And I would say more specifically, it's Ryan Pace's fault that Mitch Trubisky was picked second and you didn't have meetings with Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. We don't have to beat a dead horse. But in his resume, I don't care who you drafted. I don't care the moves that you made. You win Super Bowls with quarterbacks. Now, he has built a nice team. He has spent the most money than anybody else in the league on defense. Got to give him credit. He has built a good team. That is why they're always around 6-10, 7-9, 8-8, 9-7. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes sense why they have a strong or at least a solid foundation. But you don't win Super Bowls without a quarterback. Not when Russell Wilson's out there throwing 5 touchdowns. Not when Patrick Mahomes throwing 50 touchdowns. Not when Lamar Jackson's changing the way the game is played. Cam Newton having a resurgence, which it could have had. And I won't ever get off that one either. Bill Belichick looks like a genius for a reason. These people are telling you that this guy was washed for what reason? What evidence that they have? He was hurt. But that is the one position in the league where if you have some form of talent, you can get away with a lot of different things. So so many different storylines coming out of this Bears week 3 win. And the difference of coming out of that game, right? And if Mitch Trubisky is still your quarterback and you're 2-1, but you had that type of showing, you don't feel good about this team, especially after the first 2 weeks where you were given wins and you'll take them happily, but you were given them. But now you could fool yourself a little bit. Like, all right, well, we have a Super Bowl MVP as our quarterback in Chicago, has a comeback against Atlanta, against a gunslinger like Matt Ryan. That was a shootout, guys, and the Bears won it. Crazy, I know. You're 3-0, going against the Colts. The Colts don't necessarily scare you. You're going against another older quarterback in Phillip Rivers. They have a nice running back in Taylor. But you can win that game. And if you're 4-0, and you're looking at what Detroit and Minnesota are doing, even though Detroit won yesterday against Arizona, Minnesota down in the basement of the division. And a big win for the Packers against the Saints. And you know how I felt? I thought Aaron Rodgers was on a mission. Now, whether Russell Wilson's still your MVP, that man is going to make an argument for it too. And I'm still going with Wilson, but we got to keep our eyes on that one. Just the whole dynamic of this organization changes with Nick Foles as your quarterback. And not just Nick Foles as your quarterback, because that's not the long-term solution. The fact that you have now officially said Mitch Trubisky is no longer the solid put it on Stone every single game starter when he's healthy quarterback, because he's not. And that, without it being sung from the heavens and made a government mandate, that means he was a quote-unquote bust. I don't think he's the biggest bust in history. I don't think he's a scrub, but he's not worth the second overall pick. And now the Bears move forward with Nick Foles, and we'll see what they can do in week 4 against the Colts. But let me know your thoughts. What did you think about this Bears comeback win against the Atlanta Falcons? What do you think about Mitchell Trubisky being benched for Nick Foles? What does this mean for the team moving forward? I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and the show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Let's take a look at the rest of the NFL and see how week 3 shook out around the league. On Thursday, the Dolphins beat the Jaguars 31-13. Ryan Fitz Magic doing his thing. The Niners beat the Giants on Sunday 36-9. It looks like all the second stringers still found a way to beat that horrible Giants team. The Browns beat Washington 34-20. The Bengals and Eagles with the first tie of the season at 23 apiece. The Patriots beat the Raiders 36-20. The Bears beat the Falcons 30-26. And we didn't mention it during the Bears conversation amongst everything with Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles that Tariq Cohen has a torn ACL, or what's feared to be a torn ACL. We'll have more on that for next week's game. The Bills beat the Rams 35-32. They hold on to that win. And more than anything, a statement game for Josh Allen, for that Bills team. They're for real. And it's going to be fun to see how the Bills and Patriots match up in that conference in the AFC East. And the Rams, good team. I think the Rams are in a good position. It's tough to travel all the way out to the East Coast from the West Coast and during everything that's going on right now. But the Rams are going to be a team to reckon with, too. That NFC West is ridiculous. So, fun game. The Steelers beat the Texans 28-21. Texans 0-3 and struggling, but they still found a way to make the playoffs last year when doing the same exact thing. The Steelers, awesome defense, and if Big Ben doesn't have to be a superhero, they can count on that running game. It'll be interesting to see what Pittsburgh can do with another W2. So really, really interesting stuff in that matchup. The Titans beat the Vikings. The Vikings, the basement of the NFC North. The Titans, another team that's surprising me. You got to eventually at some point just call a spade, and Ryan Tannehill is for real. Derrick Henry gets the touches. They have some nice pieces at wide receiver. They can, again, it's not like the AFC South is this killer of a division. So, yeah, the Titans get another big win, and the Vikings are in trouble. They are in so much trouble. The Panthers, with a surprising win, in my opinion, over the Chargers 21-16. I thought the Chargers had more talent, and without Christian McCaffrey, I didn't think the Panthers were going to be able to get away with the win like they did, but sure enough, and Mike Davis was able to carry some form of the load that is left behind by TMC, but again, you're never going to replace him, and Teddy Bridgewater gets the win for the Panthers. The Chargers, though, struggle city, especially with moving forward and a young QB. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. The Colts all over the Jets, 36-7. Sorry, New York football fans. You're not going to have a fun season this year. Fun matchup between the Bears and the Colts coming up next week, so we'll keep our eyes on breaking that one down as we move along this week. The Cowboys in the Seahawks, it lived up to the hype. America's game of the week. The Seahawks beat the Cowboys 38-31. And Russell Wilson, 5 touchdowns. Dak Prescott earning his money. Both dudes are going to be in the playoffs. The NFC East is the worst division in football by far. And then you have the Seahawks, who are one of the teams that could go on and win the whole damn thing. The Lions traveled to the desert and beat the Cardinals 26-23. An interesting win and a good statement win for the Lions, and the Cardinals a little bit back down to reality, and just goes to show any team on any Sunday, and talent can keep you in a lot of games, and that's what the Lions sure do have on offense. The Buccaneers beat the poor Broncos 28-10. The Broncos are hurting. Tampa Bay getting a little healthy, although Chris Godwin came out of the game with a hamstring injury. Looked good, had a touchdown. Mike Evans had a touchdown. They were aiming for Gronk, so we'll see if Tampa gets it all put together. Tom Brady looked okay. Again, he's not going to throw it down the field like he did once in a day. He's never been that type of dude anyway, but we'll see how this ends up playing up for Tampa Bay as they get a big win, or at least a win that they needed. And on Sunday Night Football, talk about big wins. The Packers beat the Saints 37-30. The Packers without Devontae Adams, of course, the Saints without Michael Thomas. And both teams putting up points, but people are really sour on the Saints, and I still have them in the Super Bowl. But, this is a team that doesn't have their best wide receiver, and that means something. And he's not just their best wide receiver. He's a great wide receiver, one of the top 5 receivers in the league. And the Packers have another guy who's a top 10er, but they found the way to get a W in this game. And I'm telling you, Aaron Rodgers has that killer look in his eye right now. That is so bad for the NFL. And the NFC North looking pretty good when it comes to the Packers and the Bears, at least record-wise. So we'll keep our eyes and see how competitive that ends up being. And finally, it all comes to an end for Week 3 as the Kansas City Chiefs take on the Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be an awesome matchup on ESPN. I'm sure a lot of fantasy games this week are carried on between those two teams, so that should be a fun matchup. And with that, let's also take a quick look at the standings. We go to the AFC. In the AFC East, you have the Bills in first place at 3-0, the Patriots in second place at 2-1, Dolphins at 1-2, and the Jets at 0-3. In the AFC West, currently the Chiefs are 2-0. They have a game on Monday Night Football, though. The Raiders at 2-1, the Chargers at 1-2, and the Broncos at 0-3. In the AFC North, you have the 3-0 Steelers, the 2-0 Ravens, who play tonight on Monday Night Football against the Chiefs, the 2-1 Browns, and the 0-2-1 Bengals. And finally, in the AFC side, the AFC South, the Titans at 3-0, the Colts at 2-1, the Jaguars at 1-2, and the Texans at 0-3. And if they get to 0-4, there is going to be some big drama in Texas. Moving to the NFC side of the NFL, you have the Washington football team and the Dallas Cowboys in first place in the worst division in the NFL, the NFC East at 1-2, the Eagles at 0-2-1, and the Giants at 0-3. In the best division in the NFL, in my opinion, the NFC West, you have the 3-0 Seahawks, the 2-1 Cardinals, the 2-1 Rams, and the 2-1 49ers. Even with all the injuries, you have a team that's over 500. I cannot wait to see all these teams go against each other late in the year to decide home field advantage, who wins the division, who's eliminated from the playoffs. So much is on the line when it comes to the NFC West, and they are good teams. There are a lot of talented teams, and a lot of them have young quarterbacks. So this is a fun division to keep our eyes on, and it's only going to get better as the year goes along. And in a division that has two good teams of their own, you have the undefeated 3-0 Packers and the 3-0 Chicago Bears. You have the 1-2 Lions and the 0-3 Vikings. Are the Vikings being at 0-3 the most surprising thing in the NFL this year? Or is that the Texans being 0-3? We've seen the Texans come back and make it to the playoffs, even doing that last year, but you have two teams that spend a lot of money, that have a lot of marquee players, that have famous coaches, and are both in the basement right now. And I don't know if they're going to be able to get themselves out of it, especially if you have Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, but we'll see. And finally, the NFC South, a surprise for a lot of people, maybe. You have Tampa Bay at 2-1, not so much of a surprise, but the Saints at 1-2. And they don't have Michael Thomas, but still, 1-2, they don't look right. The narrative for a lot of people isn't positive, so we'll see how that continues to play out. You have the Panthers at 1-2, and the Falcons at 0-3, and a hard 0-3. But that is how the conferences shake out in the NFL after Week 3. We still have Monday Night Football on the AFC side, but it looks like some teams are who we thought they were, and some teams are a little bit of a shock. But it's just like anything in the NFL. Year to year, things get crazy, and it's still super early. But let me know, how is your team looking after Week 3? We're all over social media. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and the show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk.
Lakers will take down the Denver Nuggets, and the Lakers are headed back to the NBA Finals.
Stuff the Los Angeles Lakers on Wednesday night.
That's right, friends. The NBA gods, the basketball gods, have given us Jimmy Butler versus LeBron James, the LA Lakers, the Miami Heat, in the NBA Finals. And I have to admit it right now, for the longest time, I never thought Jimmy was a superstar. I always thought he was an all-star. I fed into it. I bought it. They got me hook, line, and sinker. When it came to Jimmy was the distraction. He was the problem. And knowing now what we know of the front office and who was running it and kind of how the whole league looked at them when it came to the Chicago Bulls, the Bulls did a lot of people dirty and they let a lot of things get out and everybody had their faults. But Jimmy Butler's a hell of a player. He's helped lead this Miami Heat team to the NBA Finals, and he has a legitimate shot of winning it. Now, are the Lakers the favorite? Yes. Should they be the favorites? Yes. Is LeBron James on any given game the best player on the court? Yes, more than likely he is. There's probably one guy who you would probably say is better than him. And even then, it's really hard, right? So we end up having this matchup. And a lot of things can be answered. Jimmy Butler can solidify himself as a top-tier guy. Can solidify himself as a Hall of Famer. Can put himself in that Kawhi level kind of place. Because Kawhi didn't have the fanfare that LeBron has, that Giannis has. You know, and again, the difference between LeBron and some of these other guys was the prodigy, the number one overall pick. But he didn't have that. Jimmy did not have that coming from Marquette. And he worked hard, and if it wasn't for an injury, he would not be coming off that Bulls bench back in the day. Like, he has had to earn every dollar and step and dribble and shot that he's gotten. And he's backed it up. He's always backed it up. The Lakers are the better team, strictly off of LeBron and Anthony Davis. But if you sleep on this Miami Heat team, they will take you 6 or 7 games. And they will get away with the win that they shouldn't have. And they will take the finals. That's truth. Like, that is something that people on the inside know. Whether or not that's what comes to fruition are totally different things. The Lakers are the better team. But, like, you can't be surprised if all of a sudden, you know, the Miami Heat go on this crazy hot streak like they've been all playoffs. They don't lose a game in the finals and they sweep the Lakers. It's like, it's not likely, but we've seen that they're capable of doing something like that. This is a team that doesn't mess around. They're here on a business trip. The Lakers have a lot of that too. But I think, and this is going to be kind of weird, okay? Even with all that being said, the pressure's still all on the Lakers. Anthony Davis still needs to win a title. LeBron still needs to win a title. You know, it'd be one thing. He's been in the finals the last 10 years. This would be his 4th one. Like, there's a lot that comes with being able to pull this off. And with another organization, his 3rd to bring a title to, and of all teams, it's the Lakers, like, there's a lot on the line for this LA team. Anthony Davis' future. There's a lot on the line for the Lakers. Miami rolls in, like, look at, you keep us in this game, and you're going to mess up eventually. And we're going to take advantage of it. I'm not making my pick yet, but before Wednesday's tip-off at 8 p.m., I'm going to have my prediction. And it's going to be awesome to see it all come together. And let's not lose fact that we're getting an NBA Finals. That we're getting MLB Playoffs, which we'll talk about in just a second. That we're in the middle. We're going to get to week 4 of the NFL. Like, while this country has found a way to, like, really muddle this up and make this very complicated when it comes to COVID-19, the sports world has figured it out. It may have taken some longer times than other, but they figured it out. And we're going to get Jimmy Butler versus LeBron James in the NBA Finals. I'm all about it. Let me know your thoughts. Who wins the NBA championship in Orlando during the COVID-19 bubble finals and playoffs? I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and the show's on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. And finally, before we head out of here, we have ourselves brackets, because we have finally made it somehow to the MLB playoffs, which means the wild card round is upon us. We have ourselves some matchups. The Cubs and White Sox finished the season against each other. The Cubs taking 2 of 3 on the south side, which gives them the NL Central title. Another one for this Cubs organization, and gives them home field advantage in the first round, the wild card round in the playoffs. But with their recent struggles, the White Sox are going to have to travel in the first round. And we'll take a look at all of the matchups in the American League first. We have the Rays hosting the Toronto Blue Jays in the 1-8 matchup. In the 4-5 matchup, we have Cleveland against the Yankees. Cleveland will be the home team. In the 3-6 matchup, we have the Twins against the Astros. The Twins will be hosting that series. And in the 2-7 matchup, the Oakland Athletics, the Chicago White Sox, two fun teams will play 3 games, hopefully in Oakland if we get to 3 games. Remember, this is a best of 3 series. In the National League, the 1 seed Dodgers takes on the 8 seed Brewers in LA. You have the 4 Padres, the 5 Cardinals getting into that matchup. San Diego, very fun team. We'll talk about that in just a little second. You have the number 3 seed, the Chicago Cubs, taking on the number 6 seed Marlins, a 3-game series in Chicago, a rivalry renewed in the playoffs. And finally, the number 2 seed Atlanta Braves take on the number 7 seed, the Cincinnati Reds. And how about that? 4 NL Central teams making it to the MLB playoffs, and 4 NL Central teams that have a lot of interesting storylines, a lot of talent, and can mess up a lot of people's brackets. But if you want to know who I'm picking, who I think is going to win the World Series, you have to stay tuned here on the network later this week, because friend of the show, best friend of the show, Paul Shivari from Baseball Weekend Journal is going to join us. And we're going to do a consensus MLB playoff bracket, and we're going to try to come to a common ground and pick our World Series 2020 matchup and predict the winner. We'll also give you our personal opinions on who wins what matchup and who we have hoisting the Commissioner's Trophy. But with that, we are done, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Don't forget, you can follow me all over social media. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. And the show is on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. You can become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have a bunch of fun tiers that you could join, along with getting our interviews ad-free and before anybody else on patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities. We have swag, friends. Get your holiday season shopping done early at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And to see what we're up to all across the Mercado Airwaves network, follow the network on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy all the games. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves network. I'm Mike Mercado.